If your congregation is anything like the Catholic parish that I've studied over the last year, no doubt you've heard the lament, we have too few volunteers to serve the needs here in our congregation. And then you hear others who will say, look at these awesome volunteers. This is a sign of flourishing in our midst. In this video, I want to speak to some of the research on recruiting, training, and retaining volunteers. I begin with a recent US study that showed that during the pandemic, volunteer rates in congregations diminished from 40% to 15%. In the Catholic parish that I've spent time with over the last year, they had nearly 1,000 volunteers before the pandemic, and this reduced to about 200 during pandemic, in large part because volunteers were no longer needed to provide a variety of in-person activities and services. Of course, new opportunities arose for online ministry. However, there was neither the expertise or the interest for some to volunteer in this space. And as you might imagine, perhaps you experienced personally, this fell on the shoulders of paid church leaders and quote unquote super volunteers volunteering in a variety of ways. Now, sociologists refer to this phenomena as a type of organizational strain. On one hand, you have intense organizational demands, and on the other hand, you have this massive gap to organizational capacities to meet those demands. Sociological research has looked into the reasons why people do not volunteer, and some of the lead reasons pertain to stage of life, social class, being spread thin across multiple stressors in different aspects of one's life, or a possible disconnect with a church's mission and vision, its leadership, and others within a congregation. Also distinct to late modern society is a phenomenon of what sociologists call role conflict. When people experience conflict between their different responsibilities in their home life, and their family life, and their work life, and their church life. And this is particularly magnified when a church and one's church community is no longer the centerpiece to their day-to-day life. There are many things competing for their time and attention. Now, while organizational strain exists, so too does what sociologists call organizational resilience. And I saw this firsthand with this Catholic parish over the last year, looking in particular at the intentional systems and structures that existed for recruiting and training volunteers before the pandemic that served them well with the ebb and flow of restrictions coming and going throughout the pandemic. Hear this list of different examples, and there are many more from this particular parish. The priest giving broadcast exhortations to people to volunteer, but going beyond that and making personal invitations to individual parishioners, inviting them to volunteer. Others within the congregation, other lay leaders who are making personal invitations and approaches to others in their sphere, inviting folks to volunteer. These personal invitations go a long way. The parish hosted different ministry fairs, inviting people to volunteer over the course of the year. They had a dedicated volunteer coordinator who served 15 hours a week and coordinated the different volunteer opportunities across the parish. Clear job roles and descriptions existed for everyone in volunteer capacities in ways that would set volunteers up for success. The weekly bulletins in this parish featured stories from different volunteers who in the process extended invitations to others to consider volunteering, tying it within the mission of the congregation of what they believe God was calling disciples to do, and to really leverage their expertise in ways that would connect them to other parishioners. One final example during the pandemic is that this parish created a space on their website for short 1 to 2 minute videos of different ministry leaders outlining their areas of ministry and opportunities for volunteers, along with a place online to set up. Now, it's one thing to recruit volunteers, it's another thing to retain them. And so what do we know about congregations that retain volunteers? Well, some of the things we noted in our own research and we've seen in other studies is that people have a strong resonance to the church's or the organization's mission and vision. There's a sense that what I'm volunteering for contributes to something much greater than myself. And this is something that leaders, and in this context, the priests, can play an important role in. Beyond that, there's a sense that volunteers are cared for beyond just their roles, but for who they are as people, that they are not micromanaged in their areas of volunteering, and that they're deeply valued and appreciated for their volunteering within a congregation. I want to conclude by leaving you with a couple questions that you may wish to take up within your congregation. The first is, what, if any, are the intentional systems and structures that your congregations feeds into to help to recruit and train volunteers? Do you actually do these things intentionally, or are they fairly haphazard? Second, in what ways do you frame volunteering around the church's mission and vision and theological understandings of the world, and even understandings of discipleship? In other words, what is it about your church's identity and culture that would draw a person to want to volunteer in this congregation? I could say a lot more, but thanks so much for checking out this video. Please share it with others in your sphere, subscribe to our newsletter on our website, and pay attention in the coming weeks where we are going to share videos from church leaders across Canada and their experiences of flourishing and volunteers within their own congregational space.